There's a stretch of New Hampshire where people happily pay $500,000 for the privilege of getting snowed in for 5 months a year, and most of them would do it all over again without blinking. Welcome to the White Mountains, the most beautiful corner of America that the locals are quietly praying you never discover. Today, we're counting down the 9 best small towns to actually live in up here, ranked from great all the way up to sell your house and move immediately. And these places do not play. We're talking towns where the worst traffic jam you'll ever sit in is a moose that refuses to yield. Towns where your nearest neighbor is a mountain that has genuinely killed more experienced hikers than it has any right to. The one with the worst weather ever recorded on planet Earth. One town on this list is so small its entire population could fit inside a decent wedding reception. And somewhere in these mountains sits a grand hotel where, back in 1944, world leaders quietly redesigned the entire global economy over dinner. Casual. Hit that subscribe button right now, or I promise you the moose already knows where you live. Let's count them down. Number 9. Whitefield. We're kicking things off in Coos County, in a town most people outside New Hampshire have never heard of, and honestly, the folks who live in Whitefield seem to like it that way. This is the affordability play of the entire list. While the fancier towns further up are pushing $500,000 and beyond, Whitefield's median property value sits around $195,000 as of the most recent data, and typical listings hover in the low to mid 300s. In the White Mountains, that's borderline miraculous. The catch, and there's always a catch, is that homes here move slowly. A house can sit on the market for 4 months before anyone bites. So if you like your real estate calm and unbothered, this is your town. What Whitefield lacks in hype, it makes up for in old-world elegance. Perched with wide-open views toward the presidential range, the town is anchored by the Mountain View Grand Resort and Spa, a sprawling white hotel that dates all the way back to 1865. The story goes that it grew out of the Dodge family farm after a stagecoach overturned nearby and stranded travelers who needed somewhere to stay. The family started taking in guests, and by 1912, they were hosting more than 200 people at a time. Today, it's a historic Hotels of America member. It even runs partly on its own wind turbine, and it gives this tiny town a genuinely grand centerpiece. Here's the honest downside. Whitefield is remote, and healthcare is the real weak spot. There's a small medical clinic in town, but your nearest full-service hospital is up in Lancaster, about 11 miles away, and Coos County as a whole is stretched thin on primary care doctors. So Whitefield lands at number 9 because it's beautiful and affordable, but it asks you to trade convenience for a low price tag and a 5-star view. For the right person, that trade is a bargain. Number 8. Bartlett. If Whitefield is where you go to save money, Bartlett is where you go to play in the snow. This Carroll County town spreads out along the Saco River Valley, and it's basically built around the outdoors. Its 2 biggest employers tell you everything. One is Attitash Mountain Resort, a proper ski area. The other is Storyland, a beloved family theme park that has been delighting overtired toddlers for generations. That's the vibe here. Ski all morning, ride a fairy tale carousel all afternoon. For someone actually looking to live here, Bartlett has 2 big draws. First, the taxes. Bartlett consistently offers some of the most attractive property tax rates in the entire Mount Washington Valley, which matters a lot when you're paying to heat a house through a northern New Hampshire winter. Second, the development. Bartlett has seen more new construction than most of its neighbors, so there's actually inventory, including the villages of Glen and Interval tucked inside its borders. Recent numbers show average sale prices jumping past $500,000, though I'd take that with a grain of salt, because in a town this size, a single luxury sale can yank the average around wildly. More typical homes still land in the $275,000 to $600,000 range. Now for the dark honesty this channel is built on. More than half the homes in Bartlett are second homes. That means for big chunks of the year you might be living in a neighborhood where half the driveways are empty, waiting for their owners to show up for a long weekend. If you want a bustling year-round community where everybody knows your name, Bartlett can feel a little quiet in the shoulder seasons. But if your dream is national forest out the back door, a chairlift 10 minutes away, and a tax bill that doesn't make you cry, Bartlett earns its spot. If you're enjoying the countdown so far, do me a favor and smash that like button. It genuinely helps the channel, and it's the only thing in this entire video that won't cost you a down payment. Let's keep climbing. Number 7. Lincoln. Lincoln is the town on this list that actually has stuff, and in the White Mountains, stuff is a legitimate luxury. Sitting at the western gateway to the Kankomagus Highway, which is arguably the most beautiful drive in all of New England, Lincoln has spent decades building itself into a proper four-season base camp. And it shows. Here's what that looks like in practice. You've got Loon Mountain Resort right there, one of the most popular ski areas in the state, complete with a gondola, a zip line, and a mountain bike park for the summer crowd. You've got the Hobo Railroad for scenic train rides, the Whale's Tail Water Park for the kids, restaurants, shops, and a downtown lively enough that you're not driving 45 minutes for a gallon of milk. Franconia Notch, the Flume Gorge, and the Basin are all just minutes up the road. For a mountain town, Lincoln is remarkably well equipped, and that's made it one of the strongest short-term rental markets in New Hampshire. The real estate story is interesting. Local figures put the median home price somewhere around $250,000, which sounds almost too good to be true for a resort town, and honestly, it partly is. That number leans on Lincoln's heavy supply of condos. Standalone homes and new construction climb well above that. The 2025 town tax rate sits at 12.66, which is reasonable for the amenities you're getting. The trade-off, and you can probably guess it by now, is crowds. When the leaves turn every fall and the entire region floods with what locals affectionately call leaf peepers, Lincoln gets busy. Popular means popular. But if you want mountain scenery without fully surrendering modern life, Lincoln is one of the most realistic places on this list to build an actual functioning existence. Number 6. Bethlehem. Now here's a town with a genuinely bizarre origin story. Back in the late 1800s, Bethlehem became the hay fever capital of the entire country, and somehow that was a selling point. Wealthy city families with brutal seasonal allergies discovered that the high, dry mountain air up here, in the highest village in all of New Hampshire, cleared their sinuses right up. So they came by the thousands. At its peak, more than 30 hotels lined the streets, 7 trains arrived every single day, and the National Hay Fever Relief Association was literally founded right here. People traveled hundreds of miles just to breathe. That's the kind of number that would make a modern allergist weep with joy. Those grand hotel crowds are long gone, but Bethlehem kept the good bones and reinvented itself as an arts town. Walk down Main Street today and you'll find preserved storefronts, contemporary galleries like the Wren and 42 Maple, a beloved old movie theater, breweries, and coffee shops, full of people who moved here specifically to slow their lives down. There's even a Donald Ross-designed golf course from 1914 for the historically inclined. The town was incorporated back in 1799, and legend has it the name was chosen on Christmas Day, which explains why the local post office does a brisk business every December, stamping holiday mail. On the numbers, Bethlehem is a bit of a moving target. Depending on which source you trust, typical home values run anywhere from the high 200s to nearly $500,000. And that spread tells you something important. This is a thin market where a handful of sales swing the averages hard. The town itself has around 2,500 residents, though the walkable village at its core is much smaller and cozier. So Bethlehem lands at number 6 because you get real arts community charm, genuine history, and Victorian houses with porches, all for prices that, in the right month, are some of the best deals in the mountains. Just double-check the listing because Bethlehem can mean a $280,000 fixer or a $490,000 showpiece. This is where the list stops being about merely pretty towns and starts being about places people actively fight to get into. Number 5. Sugar Hill. Sugar Hill might be the single prettiest town on this entire countdown, and it's definitely the tiniest, with a population you could comfortably seat at a large wedding reception. Here's a fun fact to open with. Sugar Hill is the youngest incorporated town in the entire state of New Hampshire. It only broke away and became its own town in 1962, after residents got fed up with what they literally described as a case of taxation without representation. So while it feels absolutely timeless, this place is younger than color television. The reason people make pilgrimages here comes down to 2 things. First, the lupines. Every June, the fields of Sugar Hill explode into waves of purple and pink wildflowers, with the presidential Franconia and Kinsman ranges stretched out behind them, and the whole town turns into an oil painting. There's an annual lupine festival, and people drive for hours just to photograph it. Imagine living somewhere that other people put on their bucket list, except for you, it's just the view from your kitchen window on a random Tuesday. Second, the pancakes. Polly's Pancake Parlor has been serving up breakfast in Sugar Hill since 1938, when it started with an all-you-can-eat deal for 50 cents. It's now so revered that the James Beard Foundation gave it one of their America's Classics Awards, and it serves something like 50,000 people a season. In a town this small, that's a genuine phenomenon. Now, one honest wrinkle worth mentioning. Some frustrated local landowners have actually plowed under their lupines in recent years to stop tourists from trespassing across their property for the perfect photo, so the famous display isn't always as vast as the postcards promise, which is a very small-town New England way of saying, please stay off the lawn. Sugar Hill is for the person whose idea of paradise is a farmhouse, a wood stove, and a front row seat to the best fields in the state. There isn't much here in the way of shopping or services. That silence is the entire point. Number 4, North Conway and Conway. All right, let's talk about the town that has everything. If Lincoln has stuff, the Conway area has the whole department store. This is the commercial engine of the eastern White Mountains, and North Conway in particular is where the entire region comes to shop, eat, and stock up. We're talking a full run of outlet stores, a wall of restaurants, and a historic downtown anchored by a picture-perfect old train station straight out of a model railroad set. It's the eastern gateway to the Kancamagus Highway, and it has recently been named one of the best ski towns in the whole country. Here's why that matters for anyone seriously thinking about moving. Conway is the answer to the question nobody wants to say out loud, which is, what on earth will I do for work up here? With its tourism economy, its retail base, and its role as the hub that everyone else in the valley drives to, Conway offers more actual employment and more year-round life than almost anywhere else on this list. There's also a real hospital, the 25-bed Maine Health Memorial Hospital, which posts a 92% patient recommendation rate. In a rural mountain region, having quality healthcare a short drive away is worth more than any view. The real estate has been climbing fast. North Conway's median sale price recently hit around $540,000, a sharp jump from the year before, while the broader town of Conway sits closer to $405,000. So why is the region's biggest, best-equipped hub only at number 4? One word: traffic. That main strip through North Conway can back up in a way that would genuinely make you laugh if you moved here to escape gridlock. This is less sleepy village and more small, bustling tourist town. For some people, that's an instant deal breaker. For others, being able to work, shop, and see a doctor without mounting a full expedition is exactly the balance they were looking for. Conway is the practical choice, and there's zero shame in practical. By the way, if you're already mentally rearranging your furniture into one of these towns, subscribe for more of these deep dives on the best places to live in America. We do this every single week, and the next few spots on this list might genuinely reroute your entire 5-year plan. Now the top 3. Number 3, Franconia. Now we're getting into serious, jaw-dropping scenery. Franconia sits right at the edge of Franconia Notch, one of the most dramatic mountain passes in the entire Northeast. Picture sheer granite walls, a highway threading through a narrow gap between towering peaks, waterfalls, and Cannon Mountain rising over all of it at more than 4,000 feet. Within the state park, you've got the Flume Gorge, the Basin, and Echo and Profile Lakes, plus Mount Lafayette, the highest peak in the whole county, looming above. This is the kind of place that makes you pull the car over whether you meant to or not. Franconia also carries real history and a little heartbreak. Cannon Mountain was home to the very first passenger aerial tramway in all of North America, which opened back in 1938. And for over 200 years, the mountainside here featured the Old Man of the Mountain, a natural rock formation shaped exactly like a human face in profile. It was so iconic it became the official state emblem and inspired a Nathaniel Hawthorne story. Then, on May 3rd of 2003, after centuries of standing guard, the old man simply collapsed and crumbled into the valley. New Hampshire genuinely mourned. One quick heads up. If you're planning a visit, the original tramway was retired in late 2025 and is being replaced, so check the current status before you plan a ride to the summit. The town itself is small, around 1,100 people, and beautiful, with home values averaging somewhere in the mid-500,000s. This is also where poet Robert Frost lived from 1915 to 1920, and you can still visit the farm where he wrote some of his most famous work. It fits, because Franconia is exactly the kind of place that makes people want to write things down. Living here rewards a very specific soul. If you want to wake up, look out the window at a wall of mountains, and hike or ski straight out your door, this is close to perfect. If you need a shopping mall and a hospital 10 minutes away, this will feel remote. Franconia asks you to trade convenience for raw beauty, and a surprising number of people say yes without hesitation. Number 2. Jackson. Jackson is what happens when a town decides to be an actual postcard and then fully commits to the bit. You enter the village by driving through a red-covered bridge because, of course, you do. And from that moment, the entire place feels engineered to make you sigh happily and quietly reconsider every life choice that led you to your current zip code. This tiny village, home to just over 1,000 people, sits in a valley with mighty Mount Washington looming in the distance, and it has packed an almost unfair amount of charm into a very small footprint. There's Jackson Falls, historic inns, the famous Wildcat Inn and Tavern, and a scenic setting that shows off in all 4 seasons. But the crown jewel is the Jackson Ski Touring Foundation. This nonprofit maintains around 150 kilometers of cross-country ski trails, widely rated among the finest Nordic networks in the eastern United States. And here's the magical part. Those trails run right through and around the village, stitched together across dozens of private properties, so in winter you can literally click into your skis and glide from the town center straight into the forest. Try doing that in a suburb. Now, the reality check, because this is not a cheap dream. Jackson is a thin, high-end resort market, and recent listing prices have pushed toward the neighborhood of $900,000 and up. That number bounces around because there are so few homes for sale at any given moment, but the direction is clear. Beauty this concentrated is expensive, and everyone else has already noticed. Interestingly, Jackson's year-round population has actually grown by more than a quarter over the past decade, which tells you people aren't just visiting, they're committing. Jackson lands all the way up at number 2 because it delivers the mountain village fantasy almost completely. It's stunning in every season, it has a real and tight-knit community, and it has world-class outdoor access woven into daily life. The only thing standing between you and this town is a very large check, which brings us at last to number 1. Number 1. Littleton. At the very top of this list sits a town that quietly does everything right, and it's the one I'd bet on for the widest range of people. Littleton isn't the tiniest, and it isn't the flashiest, but it threads a needle that almost none of the other towns can manage. It's genuinely beautiful, it's genuinely livable, and it works just as well in the dead of February as it does on a golden October afternoon. Let's start with the setting. Littleton runs right along the Amonoosuc River, and its downtown is the kind of place urban planners study, and greeting card companies quietly steal from. You get a walkable main street lined with local shops, a river tumbling through the middle with a pedestrian bridge, a covered bridge, and a real sense that this is a functioning community rather than a vacation set that empties out after Labor Day. The town even leans into a relentlessly cheerful identity, nicknamed the Glad Town, complete with a bronze statue of the fictional optimist Pollyanna smiling on the library lawn. Outside Magazine has named it one of the best small towns in America, and it's easy to see why. Then there's the claim to fame, and it's a good one. Littleton is home to Chudder's, which holds the Guinness World Record for the longest continuous candy counter on Earth. We're talking 111 feet and 11 inches of candy, 3 tiers tall, holding roughly 700 different varieties of penny candy. It is exactly as delightful and exactly as dangerous for your dental health as it sounds. A town famous worldwide for one enormous wall of candy is a town that has its priorities in order. But here's what truly earns Littleton the crown, and it's the least glamorous thing on this entire list. Infrastructure. Unlike the tiny scenic villages we've covered, Littleton actually functions as a full-time home. There's a real economy with real jobs. There's shopping and dining you'd otherwise drive an hour for. And critically, there's Littleton Regional Healthcare, the only level 3 trauma center in the region, now joining the Dartmouth health system. When you're this far north, having serious medical care in your own town isn't a luxury. It's the difference between a livable place and a beautiful gamble. On the numbers, Littleton is refreshingly attainable too, with typical home values landing in the range of the high 200s to the upper 300s depending on the source, and values climbing fast as more people catch on. So that's the secret. The number one most livable, beautiful town in the White Mountains isn't the priciest or the most postcard perfect. It's the one that gives you the views and the charm and the candy wall, but also a hospital, a job market, and a main street that's alive in the off season. Littleton is the whole package, and word is getting out quickly. Before we wrap, a couple of honorable mentions that just missed the cut. If pure resort beauty is your obsession, keep an eye on Waterville Valley, a planned resort community tucked inside the national forest with world-class skiing and a brand new six-passenger bubble lift. It's gorgeous, but with only a few hundred year-round residents and home prices that have skyrocketed since the pandemic, it leans more vacation compound than living town. And remember that hotel from the intro, the one where world leaders redesigned the global economy? That's the Grand Resort at Bretton Woods, where the historic 1944 Bretton Woods Conference literally created the systems that shaped modern international finance. It sits in the town of Carroll, which is why it's a landmark on this list rather than a ranked entry, but it's absolutely worth the drive. So there you have it. 9 small towns in the White Mountains, ranked from affordable and grand Whitefield all the way up to the do-it-all charm of Littleton. Any one of them could be the place you finally disappear to. These towns have survived brutal winters, faded railroad fortunes, and the collapse of an actual stone landmark, and they're all still standing, still stunning, and still quietly waiting for the right people to show up and stay. If this list gave you a dangerous new dream, you know what to do. Subscribe for more of the best places to live in America. Drop a like so the algorithm sends this to someone who also needs to move to a mountain immediately. And tell me down in the comments which of these 9 towns you would actually pack up and relocate to. Just try not to all pick Littleton. The candy counter can only handle so many of us at once.